Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaurabhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire. Hare Krishna. So we continue our discussions on Canto 1, Chapter 11, Lord Krishna's entrance into Dwarka. So we've been discussing how, as the Lord was entering into Dwarka, all the citizens, the ladies, all of them were very enthusiastic, eager to welcome. And we discussed how the whole city of Dwarka was decorated with many natural things for decoration. And in this way they welcomed the Lords. So now we're proceeding with text 16-17. On hearing that the most dear Krishna was approaching Dwarka Dham, magnanimous Vasudev, Akrura, Ugrasen, Balaram, the superhumanly powerful, Pradyumna, Charudeshna, and Samba, the son of Jambavati, all extremely happy, abandoned resting, sitting, and dining. So they were so eager to receive that whatever they're doing, they gave it up. So that is a lalasa, the great eagerness with which these devotees want to welcome the Lord. So Prabhupada is describing in brief about each of these personalities. You can read that. Text 18. They hastened towards the Lord on chariots with brahmanas bearing flowers. Before them were elephants, emblems of good fortune. Conch shells and bugles were sounded, and Vedic hymns were chanted. Thus they offered their respects, which was saturated with affection. So Prabhupada writes, the Vedic way of receiving great personality creates an atmosphere of respect, which is saturated with affection and veneration for the person received. The auspicious atmosphere of such a reception depends on the paraphernalia described above, including conch shells, flowers, incense, decorated elephants, and qualified brahmanas reciting verses from the Vedic literature. Such a program of reception is full of sincerity on the part of both the receiver and the received. So the Bhagavatam is teaching us how to receive a great personality with auspicious things. Chanting of mantras, conch shells, flowers, incense. So that's the way to receive.
How it is sincerity for the receiver?
In some other purports, Prabhupada writes, you know it. So nowadays also they may receive some great person, some politician or someone. So what is the motive behind that?
Party में सीट मिलेगा.
So as far as politician is concerned, he is thinking about
Is already the
votes. And the people who are receiving, they are thinking about somehow trying to flatter the person. So that they will get benefit. So that means both are not sincere. The receiver and the received, both are not sincere. Both of them have hidden motives, agendas. So therefore there is no sincerity there. It's all external show. There is no respect, there is no affection, nothing is there. simply a dry formality. That's all. And both of them have hidden motives and agendas. But here, in this case, it is not like that. So in this case, those who are receiving, they are also receiving love, affection, respect. And of course, the received is here is Krishna himself. So needless to say. But so therefore, that is the point. That there must be the proper mood, proper respect, and there must be the auspicious atmosphere created. So all this is required. So this is what we should learn. How to receive great personalities, how to receive the Lord. So this is the way. Not with artificial things so not simply an external show, but a genuine respect. Okay, text 19. At the same time, many hundreds of well-known prostitutes began to proceed on various vehicles. They were all very eager to meet the Lord, and their beautiful faces were decorated with dazzling earrings which enhanced the beauty of their foreheads. Please read the purport.
We may not date even prostitutes if they are devotees of the Lord. Even today, there are many prostitutes in great cities of India who are sincere devotees of the Lord. By tricks of chance, one may be obliged to adopt a profession which is not very admirable in society, but that does not hamper one in executing devotional service to the Lord. Devotional service to the Lord is uncheckable in all circumstances. It is understood herewith that even in those days, about 5,000 years ago, there were prostitutes in cities like Dwarka, where Lord Krishna resided. This means that prostitutes are necessary reasons for proper upkeep of society. The government opened wine shops, but this does not mean that the government encourages drinking of wine. The idea is that there is a class of men who will drink at any cost, and it has been experienced this prohibition in great cities encourage illicit smuggling of wine. Similarly, men who are not satisfied at home require such concessions as prostitution. And if there is no prostitute, then such low men will induce others into prostitution. It is better that prostitutes be available in the marketplace so that the sanctity of society can be maintained. It is better to maintain a class of prostitutes than to encourage prostitutes within society. The real reformation is to enlighten all people to become devotees of Lord, and that will check all kinds of deteriorating factors of life. Shri Bilvamangal Thakur, a great Acharya Vishnu Swami, Vaishnava sect, in his household life was overly attached to a prostitute who happened to be a devotee of the Lord. One night when the Thakur came to Chintamani's house in torrents of rain and thunder, Chintamani was astonished to see how the Thakur could come to such a dreadful night after crossing a foaming river which was full of waves. She said to Thakur Bilvamangal that his attraction for the flesh and bone of an insignificant woman like her would be properly utilized if it could be diverted to the devotional service of the Lord to achieve the attraction for the transcendental beauty of the Lord. It was a momentous hour for the Thakur, and he took a turn towards spiritual realization by the words of a prostitute. Later, the Thakur accepted the prostitute as his spiritual master, and in several places of his literary works, he has glorified the name Chintamani, who showed him the right path. In Bhagavad Gita 9.32, the Lord says, O son of Pritha, even the low-born Chandalas and those who are born in family of unbelievers and even the prostitutes shall attain the perfection of life if they take shelter of unalloyed devotional service to me. Because in the path of devotional service there are no impediments due to degraded birth and occupation. The path is open for everyone who agrees to follow it. It appears that the prostitutes of Dwarka, who were so eager to meet the Lord, were all his unalloyed devotees, and thus they were all on the path of salvation according to our words of Bhagavad Gita. Therefore, The only reformation that is necessary in society is to make an organized effort to turn the citizen into devotees of the Lord, and thus all good qualities of the denizens of heaven will overtake them in their own way. On the other hand, those who are non-devotees have no good qualifications whatsoever, however they may be materially advanced. The difference is that devotees of the Lord are on the path of liberation, whereas the non-devotees are on the path of further entanglement in the material bondage. The criteria of advancement of civilization is whether the people are educated and advance on the path of salvation.
So one of the very amazing purports, Prabhupada has covered the subject matter from practically all angles. So he has described why the prostitutes are present, what is the need of the prostitutes, and they also can be pure devotees, and they can also go back to the spiritual world. So practically everything has been described. Okay. Text 20. Expert dramatists, artists, dancers, singers, historians, genealogists, and learned speakers all gave their respective contributions, being inspired by the superhuman pastimes of the Lord. Thus they proceeded on and on. So all these different types of people, they came to welcome the Lord. So Prabhupada writes, such dramatists, dancers, singers, historians, genealogists, and public speakers would dwell on the subject of the Lord's superhuman activities in different ages and millenniums, and not on ordinary events, nor were they in chronological order. All the Puranas are historical facts described only in relation to the Supreme Lord in different ages and times, as well as on different planets also. Therefore, we do not find any chronological order. Therefore, even the Bhagavad Puran doesn't have chronological order. Many times we don't find chronology. So, why? Because it is all at different times and different planets. The modern historians therefore cannot catch up the link, and thus they unauthoritatively remark that the Puranas are all imaginary stories only. So even 100 years ago in India, all dramatic performances were centered around the superhuman activities of the Supreme Lord. The common people would be verily entertained by the performances of dramas, and yatra parties played wonderfully on the superhuman activities of the Lord, and thus even the illiterate agriculturist would be a participant in the knowledge of Vedic literature, despite a considerable lack of academic qualifications. Therefore, expert players in drama, dancers, singers, speakers, etc. are required for the spiritual enlightenment of the common man. The genealogist would give account completely of the descendants of a particular family. Even at the present moment, the guides in the pilgrimage sites of India submit a complete account of genealogical tables before a newcomer. This wonderful act sometimes attracts more customers to receive such important information. So, So Prabhupada very often quoted this verse from the 5th chapter of the same canto, text 22. Idam hi pumsa stapasa shrutasya va shvishtasya suptasya cha buddhi dattayo avichyuto artha kavibi nirupito yaduttama shloka gunanuvarnanam. So, learned circles have positively concluded that the infallible purpose of the advancement of knowledge, namely austerity, study of the Vedas, sacrifice, chanting of hymns and charity, culminates in the transcendental descriptions of the Lord who is defined in choice poetry. So ultimately everything should be meant for Uttama Shloka Gunanu Varnanam. Everything should be meant for glorification of the Lord. Therefore, Prabhupada in this purport also he says, Therefore, all the sages and devotees of the Lord have recommended that the subject matter of art, science, philosophy, physics, chemistry, psychology, and all other branches of knowledge should be wholly and solely applied in the service of the Lord. Art, literature, poetry, painting, etc., may be used in glorifying the Lord. Further on, again, Prabhupada writes, similarly, science and philosophy also should be applied in the service of the Lord. Philosophy and science should be engaged to establish the glory of the Lord. Similarly, all the branches of knowledge should always be engaged in the service of the Lord. So this is what, who's speaking this? Yes, Narad Muni is speaking to Vyasadeva. So the important point is that everything can be used in Krishna's service. Art, science, philosophy, painting, music, everything can be used. And so that is how we find Srila Prabhupada also, he engaged everyone according to their different propensities in Krishna's service. So somebody was good in painting, Prabhupada engaged them. Somebody was good in writing, Prabhupada engaged them. Somebody is good in singing, Prabhupada engaged them. Book distribution, selling books, somebody. So agriculture, cow protection, everything can be used. So therefore, nobody can say that I don't have a service where I cannot engage my propensities in Krishna's service. No. Everything can be used. And that's how Srila Prabhupada says that, so those who are guiding the devotees, they need to find out what is the best engagement that can be given to that particular devotee so that he can engage his propensities and remain satisfied in Krishna consciousness. So it's not that everyone needs to do the same thing. So everyone has got different propensities and they should simply be engaged in Krishna's service. And everyone can be satisfied in that way.
By tricks of chance, one may be obliged to adopt a profession which is not very adorable in society. So we hear the pastime of Mrigari and all these things, like, he also gave the same reason. But then Narad Muni told him that, no, not acceptable, because you are doing this and that. So how to understand this point of prostitution then here? One can't just say that this is just because of my family profession by tricks of change.
But is there no difference between what Mrigari was doing and these prostitutes are doing?
You half killing and things like that. Narad Muni told him, why don't you at least kill fully?
So that's what I'm asking. So is there no difference between the two?
They are attracted to Krishna. There is certainly a difference.
No. Is there any difference between what he was doing and what they are doing?
Like based on the activities, not sure, because they are also doing like kind of thing. But of course, the end result is they are somehow or other getting attracted to Lord Krishna. That is great. But I am just talking about the activities.
And that's what the activity only we are talking about. So is there no difference in the activity? That is half killing. So giving so much of pain to the animals, the living entities. So that is highly sinful, isn't it? Of course, as Prabhupada is explaining why, therefore Prabhupada is explaining the other part also, na? Why the prostitutes are required. Prabhupada is explaining that also. So therefore, in one sense, they are doing a service in the society. So what service Mrigari was doing?
No, of course, I just took the reference of Mrigari. In the sense, there are many other professions like slaughtering and things like that. They are
No,
directly
then again you are comparing the same thing, slaughtering. Therefore, Prabhupada has explained so beautifully and completely has explained that why there is a need.
Then one may say that okay, ठीक if slaughtering is there, then because this is the illicit activity. So if you are comparing that, your four regulative principles are getting broken here. So whether you say about killing animals,
Okay, so then
illicit
even
sex-
about killing animals, so therefore Prabhupada is explaining that point also. That there are going to be a section of the people who are going to indulge in these sinful activities. So therefore license is given, even in the scriptures license is given. But license means what? Prohibition. License means prohibition. License does not mean unrestricted activity. But because there are going to be a section of the people who will indulge in them, so therefore license is given for restricted indulgence. Therefore Prabhupada is explaining, therefore then the government opens some wine shops. Of course not these days, this is another story. But ideally. Or even in the Shastra. So even in the Shastra there is a recommendation for animal killing, in sacrifice. Also some drinking also is allowed in sacrifice. So all that is allowed. Why? Because there is going to be a section of the people. So similarly, Prabhupada is writing, some prostitution also is required. So therefore, so the children proceed.
Hare Krishna. In one of the class, I heard that this prostitutes are not like so gross like today's prostitutes. They generally used to kind of entertain people when they come to them by singing, dancing, and things like that. So they were also considered society girls. And second example which I heard, he was telling that the way there is a this fire, ceasefire are there, and this what is that? Fire extinguishers. So fire extinguishers are kept just to, in case some emergency is there. Fire extinguishers are not kept just because everyday fire is there. So prostitutes in the Dwarka doesn't necessarily that every day they are fully engaged. Not like that. They are there in case somebody like that.
Okay, those are also valid points. Yes. Of course, Vishwanath Thakur in his translation, he therefore translates it as dancing girls. He does not even use the word prostitutes. So most probably maybe at that time there were no prostitutes or what, I don't know. He doesn't even use the word. So he translates as dancing girls. So that's correct. So, but in any case, Prabhupada is putting it in modern day context, where actual prostitution is there. And then Prabhupada is also justifying it and saying, yes, that's also required. But especially in a place like Dwarka in those times, of course, it's not something like present day prostitution. Correct. We can't expect that. So, okay. Okay. So the 20th verse we were discussing of how everything can be used in Krishna's service. And so therefore here also we find dramatists, artists, dancers, singers, everyone is coming to glorify the Lord with their respective contributions. So therefore it's important that no one is discouraged from devotional service. And there is no discrimination made. This service is higher, this service is lower. So that sort of discrimination should not be made. All services are important, and all services can be, all talents, skills can be used in Krishna's service. That should be the basic principle, and that's how Srila Prabhupada engaged all devotees in Krishna's service. So there was, I was hearing a conversation in Vrindavan. So Prabhupada is talking with the Gurukul managers there. And so Prabhupada is explaining that how, so very beautiful conversation. Prabhupada, so many details Prabhupada is explaining. Prabhupada is asking the whole day schedule for the students, how much time each class must be, how many breaks should be there, when to start, when to end, full detail. Prabhupada is explaining. They are asking, Prabhupada is explaining. Amazing. So many details Prabhupada has spoken. How many times prasadam, this, that, so many things. In just one, maybe 45 minutes conversation, less than that. So many things. Anyway, so in that conversation, so they are complaining that there is one boy who is not studying nicely, who is not very serious. So then Prabhupada is saying, so then send him to Juhu. Prabhupada is saying, you can hear it. And let him be engaged like a common man. Or he can also be sent to the Hyderabad farm, and there he can do agriculture, growing, digging, all that he can do. And then Prabhupada says, it is not that everyone can become Brahmana, everyone can study scriptures. No, it is not possible. So he says that, especially those who have a Brahmanical service and those who are Kshatriyas. So in Vedic times also, basically the Brahmanas and Kshatriyas, they would go to the Gurukul. Of course, Vaishyas also, but basically Vedic education was meant for Brahmanas and Kshatriyas. And so Prabhupada is saying everyone is not going to be able to do that. So therefore Prabhupada says, so if somebody is not able to do that, then they should be engaged in other services. Not that everyone will do the same thing. So he said, yes, okay, he is not interested in... then Prabhupada clarifies, he says, the basic program is meant for everyone. The basic program of rising early in the morning, attending Mangalarti, attending class, that basic program is meant for everyone. But as far as services are concerned, then they should be different. So then Prabhupada says, so then it is the responsibility of those, the guides, the managers, to find out what are different propensities of different individuals and engage them accordingly. We can't expect everyone to do the same thing. So Prabhupada is clarifying very nicely all these points. So that's how everyone can be engaged. And that's how we find Srila Prabhupada, he expertly engaged everyone in Krishna's service. And he appreciated everyone's service. So when Prabhupada would speak to the book distributors, Prabhupada would glorify them and speak as if book distribution is the best service. When Prabhupada would speak to the pujaris, then Prabhupada would say the pujaris are the most fortunate people in the world because they are the most dear to the Lord. They are so close to the Lord. So in this way, whomever Prabhupada met, Prabhupada then he would glorify the library party, those who are distributing books to libraries. So in this way, whoever would meet Prabhupada, Prabhupada would glorify them and encourage them as if their service is most important. So these are all very important things and we have to learn these things from Prabhupada. That's the meaning of following in the footsteps of the Acharyas. Not that one considers, okay, this service is better, that service is not good. this is higher, that is lower, encouraging someone, discouraging someone. No, this was not the way Prabhupada dealt with things, dealt with devotees. That was not the way he did. Prabhupada's mode was encouraging everyone. Because everyone is important. Prabhupada says that just like in the body, we say the Shudras are legs. But are the legs important or no? Yes, the legs are also important. They have their duty. So everyone in society is important. So just like I was hearing in some place, so those people who pick up the garbage in some country outside India, so there are people who pick up garbage, so they were getting less salary. So then they wanted to protest. So they went on strike. So then for 4 or 5 days or something like that, the garbage was not picked up. Then what's the result? So much of stink and so much of uncleanliness. Yes, that will also lead to spreading of diseases. So then people realized their importance when they went on strike. So in this way, everyone plays a part in society. Everyone plays a role. And therefore everyone needs to be given importance and everyone needs to be appreciated, valued. And that was how Srila Prabhupada dealt with devotees. And that's what we need to learn. So that's very important. Ultimately, every devotee, irrespective of what service they are doing, needs to be encouraged. No problem. Krishna has made everyone different. Variety is always the mother of enjoyment. So just like in the garland, how many varieties of flowers are there? You can do the counting later, but in any case, how many? At least there are 5-6 varieties. So if there was only one variety, it won't look so beautiful, isn't it? Huh? And that's why you're wearing garland. What? Jasmine flower. No, even if there is jasmine flower, they don't make garland only of jasmine flowers. Even in that, they at least put some roses or something in between. So anyway, the point is, variety is required. So just like here, we find so many different people, varieties of people. They're all coming to glorify the Lord. And so that's how we need to conduct the society. Okay. And then, so all these people are coming to offer their respects and welcome the Lord. And in return, the Lord is reciprocating with them. Okay, text 21, let's recite. Bhagavam statra bandhunam pauranam anuvartinam yatha vidyopasangamya sarvesham manamadade. Lord Krishna, the personality of Godhead, approached them and offered due honor and respect to each and every one of the friends, relatives, citizens, and all the others who came to receive and welcome him. So here, the important word that is used is yatha vidhi. Yatha vidhi. Yatha vidhi means according to their position. According to their position, Krishna reciprocated, but he reciprocated with all. Sarvesham. Sarvesham means what? Each and everyone. Each and everyone. Of course, that only Krishna can do. But still, he's reciprocating with each and everyone. How? Yatha vidhi. As it behooves them, according to their position. Okay. So seniors, equals, juniors. So different people. So according to their position, Krishna reciprocated with each one of them. So as Prabhupada writes, the Supreme Lord Personality of Godhead is neither impersonal nor an inert object unable to reciprocate the feelings of his devotees. Here the word yatha vidhi or just as it behooves is significant. He reciprocates just as it behooves with his different types of admirers and devotees. Of course, the pure devotees are of one type only because they have no other object for service but the Lord, and therefore the Lord also reciprocates with such pure devotees just as it behoves. Namely, is always attentive to all the matters of his pure devotees. There are others who designate him as impersonal, and so the Lord also does not take any personal interest. He satisfies everyone in terms of one's development of spiritual consciousness. So essentially the principle of Yeyatamam Prabhutinta. And a sample of such reciprocation is exhibited here with his different welcomers. So you can see how, you must have seen in videos also, when devotees would come to receive Srila Prabhupada, then every devotee would come with a flower to offer to Prabhupada. And what Prabhupada would do? Yes, he would take one and he would give one. Take and give, take and give. Dadati prati grinati. So he would reciprocate like that. So in this way, we find Srila Prabhupada had these amazing ways of reciprocating with so many devotees. And that's how he touched the hearts of so many devotees with that simple reciprocation. Nothing very complicated, but just that simple reciprocation. But then with that simple reciprocation, which was sincere, genuine, full of so much of love and affection, so the devotees' hearts were touched. In fact, it is described, I think so, Shamsun Prabhu describes in his book, I suppose. So when Srila Prabhupada got a stroke in 67 and he came back to India for some time, that was between July of 1967 till October or November of 67. So, and then when he went back from India to America, Srila Prabhupada took gifts for all the devotees, including the ladies. He took saris for the ladies. You can just imagine which sannyasi will do this. And then, I think so Yamuna Mataji writes. So she says that Srila Prabhupada was so expert, of course Paramatma is inspiring him, but he gave exactly the color of the sari which that devotee liked. So, height of personalism, so personal. Exactly what that devotee likes. So in this way, and there are so many pastimes. You have heard of this Urvashi Mataji? How she, when she came to Vrindavan for Krishna Balram temple opening, then just before coming she went to her mother and she told her that she's coming to India. So she asked her mother, would you like to give something for Swamiji? So they had a guava tree in the garden, Peru. That guava tree in the garden. So she made this guava jam, filled it in a bottle and gave it. And so when this Mataji came to Vrindavan, then of course, so many devotees from all over the world came, so many were giving gifts. Hundreds of devotees. Krishna Balram temple opening, Ram Navami of 1975. Very soon 50th anniversary is coming. So, but when Srila Prabhupada, amongst all those gifts, when he received this guava jam, then he specifically asked the servant, who brought this? That servant had even forgotten who had given. Somehow he remembered and he called this Mataji, and then Prabhupada specifically called her, thanked her, and not only thanked her, but he sent a letter to the mother thanking her. So that's how Srila Prabhupada was reciprocating. So even though he was like a world acharya, traveling all over the world, writing books, managing centers, managing devotees, he was doing all this, but yet he had time for even these small things to express gratitude towards a devotee. Not even a devotee, that mother was not even a devotee, but still. So that is how Srila Prabhupada, with these loving exchanges, touched the hearts of hundreds and hundreds of people. So here the Lord is reciprocating with each and every one. Now here how many hundreds and thousands of people must have come to receive Him? Lord is reciprocating with each and every one. Of course the Lord can do that. But then the Acharya like Srila Prabhupada, as representative of Krishna, is also teaching us how we can reciprocate. So therefore Prabhupada is beginning the purport by saying that the Lord is not impersonal, nor are we as devotees of the Lord supposed to be impersonal. So therefore, such types of personalist reciprocations are very important in the society of devotees. So now how he reciprocated, he is describing in the next verse. The Almighty Lord greeted everyone present by bowing his head, exchanging greetings, embracing, shaking hands, looking and smiling, giving assurances and awarding benedictions, even to the lowest in rank. So in the verse it is said, Ashwapakebhya, Ashwapakebhya, down to the lowest rank of dog eaters.
द्वारका में dog eaters भी दोस्त हैं.
All types of people. So the important point is how the Lord is reciprocating with everyone. So for the Lord there is no high and low. He is reciprocating with everyone. So usually the tendency is to reciprocate only with those we feel who are important. Correct? But here we find no, the Lord is reciprocating with everyone. High, low, middle, everyone. So in English there's a saying, na? The strength of a chain is judged by its weakest link. So, how an organization is running can be seen by how the lowest in the rank in the organization, what is his opinion about the organization. By that, one can judge how the organization is running. So those who are high post, big managers, leaders, there are always a lot of people to welcome them and take care of them and serve them. Needless to say. But then, what is the quality of the organization can be judged by how one who is lowest in the rank, how is he being taken care of? So if one lowest in rank is also feeling greatly satisfied, that means there is good organization and management. So these points even the materialistic people speak about. Of course, they have all their own motives for doing things. That is another thing. But these are all important principles which we can learn from the Bhagavatam. We don't have to go anywhere else to learn. From the Bhagavatam itself, we can learn all these principles. From the dealings of the Lord and His devotees. From that itself, we can learn. So that's what Srila Prabhupada explains in other purports. That nowadays what happens? So those who are lower in rank, like the workers and these people, they're not taken care of. They're neglected. Then what happens? Then they're dissatisfied. When they're dissatisfied, what happens? They go on strike. They protest. Why? Because they're dissatisfied. So then there is always friction between these labor organizations and the capitalists. Always friction, strikes. Why? Dissatisfaction. So that should not be the case. So everyone needs to feel satisfied. And here we can see how the Lord is reciprocating. To receive the Lord Sri Krishna, there were all grades of population, beginning from Vasudeva, Ugrasen and Gargamuni, the father, grandfather and teacher. So these are high-ranking people, down to prostitutes and chandalas, who are accustomed to eat dogs. And every one of them was properly greeted by the Lord in terms of rank and position. Yathavidhi, in terms of rank and position. So of course, it's not that the reciprocation is same, but there is some reciprocation. It may not be the same, but there is some reciprocation. As pure living entities, all are the separated parts and parcels of the Lord, and thus no one is alien by his eternal relation. That is the Siddhanta. The Siddhanta is what? Everyone is part and parcel of the Lord, whatever be his position. So if one can see that connection to the Lord, then yes, then one can reciprocate accordingly, appropriate. Such pure living entities are graded differently in terms of contamination of the modes of material nature, but the Lord is equally affectionate to all his parts and parcels, despite material gradation. So when one sees on the spiritual platform, then yes, then one is able to give that respect to everyone. It is only because Srila Prabhupada had that vision, therefore he could go to the Bowery and preach. Otherwise, if he would have thought, oh, such disgusting people, would it have been possible to stay there and preach? It is described that that place 24 hours a day would simply have the stench of wine and urine. Just imagine. That was the place Prabhupada, Paramhamsa Mahabhagavat was living. So the only reason he could live there and try to preach is because he was seeing them as spirit souls, parts and parcels of Krishna. That is the only reason why he could stay there and try to preach to them. So therefore, we need to try and develop that spiritual vision as we get purified. Then we will not simply be seeing in terms of material gradations, material posts and positions. No one is rejected by the Lord from the kingdom of God, and it remains with the living being to accept this or not. Okay, text 23. Then the Lord personally entered the city accompanied by elderly relatives and invalid brahmanas with their wives, all offering benedictions and singing the glories of the Lord. Others also praised the glories of the Lord. Here also Prabhupada makes some nice points. The brahmanas in society were never attentive to banking money for future retired life. When they were old invalids, they used to approach the assembly of the kings, and simply by praising the glorious deeds performed by the kings along with their wives, they would be provided with all the necessities of life. Such brahmanas were not, so to speak, flatterers of the kings, but the kings were actually glorified by their actions. That means they were worth glorifying. And they were sincerely still more encouraged in pious acts by such brahmanas in a dignified way. Lord Sri Krishna is worthy of all glories, and the praying brahmanas and others were glorified themselves by chanting the glories of the Lord. So the brahmanas themselves were glorified by glorifying the Lord. Text 24. When Lord Krishna passed over the public roads, all the ladies from the respectable families of Dwarka went up to the roofs of their palaces just to have a look at the Lord. They considered this to be the greatest festival. Having darshan of the Lord is Tad Ikshana Mahotsavaha. It is a Mahotsava, a great festival to the eyes. Tad Ikshana Mahotsava. So we already saw this point before also. In Hastinapur also, the ladies, they went to the roofs. So here also in Dwarka also you find the same thing. And Prabhupada is also mentioning similar points. But Prabhupada is also talking about this Mahotsav. To have a look at the Lord is a great festive occasion, undoubtedly, as it was considered by the metropolitan ladies of Dwarka. This is still followed by the devout ladies of India, especially during the days of Julan, Janmashtami. The ladies of India still throng up in greatest numbers at the temple of the Lord. And then Prabhupada is describing about the Archa Vigraha. So further down in that paragraph, Prabhupada writes, the authorized acharyas who know the science perfectly install such temples of the Lord under regulative principles just to offer facilities to the common man. But persons who are less intelligent without being conversant with the science mistake this great attempt to be idol worship and poke their nose into that to which they have no access. Poke their nose. So they don't understand transcendental subject matter, still they want to comment. Oh, this deity, simply idol worship. So they don't understand anything, still they want to comment as if they know a lot of things. That is the meaning of poke their nose. So Prabhupada is writing, just before that, he's writing, there were festivities in the temple of the Lord as held generally are like festivals performed during the manifestive days of the Lord of Dwarka about 5,000 years ago. So festivals should be very grand. So Prabhupada is expecting that. Just like when the Lord was personally present. So therefore, the Acharyas established such temples so that such festivals can be celebrated and so many people can come to the temples on such festival days. That's what happens, correct? On festivals, a lot of people come. People are automatically attracted to festivals when they are nicely performed. And that's how they get the benefit. They get the benefit of having darshan of the Lord, the chanting, and the prasadam and all that. That's how the people get benefited. Their devotional service begins. So all services are important, again, the same points. So therefore, it's not that the deity services are not important, the pujaris are not important, that need not be taken care. No, it's not like that. Every service is important. And every service has to be done with great care and attention. That's what Srila Prabhupada taught us. So, yes. And then again Prabhupada writes this point, which he wrote before also. The ladies did not mix with the crowd on the streets, and their respectability was perfectly observed. There was no artificial equality with the man. Female respectability is preserved more elegantly by keeping the women separate from the man. So the ladies have to understand this point also. Female respectability is preserved more elegantly by keeping the women separate from the man. The sexes should not mix unrestrictedly. So see, these are principles which need to be applied everywhere. Therefore, Prabhupada is writing these in his purport. This is Vedic civilization. And this culture needs to be preserved. Not that now we are becoming modern, so these things don't apply. No, not acceptable. Or it's not that even in our ISKCON temples, it's not that in the West it does not apply, only in India it applies. No, Vedic culture is Vedic culture throughout the world. Prabhupada made no distinction. Everywhere he expected the same principles. So, of course, if they're totally new people, one could be sensitive, but then eventually these things need to be taught, and that culture needs to be enforced. Otherwise, if we don't enforce it, then the culture simply degrades. It's not going to happen automatically. Somebody has to enforce it. So if we think that now everyone is mixing, everywhere man and woman are mixing, so in our programs also let them mix, no problem. Then what are we doing? We ourselves are becoming responsible for degrading the culture. So we can't allow it. Of course we have to do it sensitively, but the point is that these principles need to be maintained. I'm especially speaking this because sometimes these days devotees also tend to think, oh, nowadays it is not applicable, it is fanaticism, this, that. No. Vedic culture is Vedic culture. And the culture should be applied everywhere. In any part of the world, the culture needs to be applied. It's not based on the culture of that place. Of course, there's no culture. But then, by enforcing the Vedic culture, that is what will keep the people happy. Okay. Huh?
You mean this is a non-existable principle, not an existable detail?
Hariyo.
You can take it that way. But of course, it's not one of the principles of devotional service. But the point is that the culture definitely needs to be implemented. And that's what Srila Prabhupada always wanted.
So Prabhuji, Prabhupada wanted it, and you are teaching us, we are understanding, but we don't see this being applied in the temple, even in ISKCON Juhu. What to speak of Western countries?
Do the needful.
We make ISKCON Juhu. If we follow, then it's ISKCON Juhu. If we don't follow, then it's not ISKCON Juhu.
Okay, fine.
I've seen very personally in some part of our preaching that where devotees have applied this culture, they start with new preaching only, people don't know. But the time they were very strict that women should not approach the preacher, the brahmacharis, and they have only maintained contact with the men preachers, and women have concerns, they can tell to their husbands and men preachers, the Grasa preachers. And like that, the culture has enforced, and it was very wonderful. And safe preaching is going on. So it is possible, only we should have faith in Prabhupada's words and try to apply it.
Definitely, definitely. Ultimately, it's up to us. It's up to us to implement. That's correct. Yes. It's not that somebody else has to do it. Ultimately, we only have to do it. We are part of the society. Why? It's very easy to blame somebody else, but why not, as said, what's that? Even Prabhupada quoted Mahatma Gandhi. Yes, be the change you want to see in the world. Okay, text 25. Nityam nirikshamananam yadapi dvarakakaukasam na vitrapyanti hidrasha striyo dhamangam achyutam. The inhabitants of Dwaraka were regularly accustomed to look upon the reservoir of all beauty, the infallible Lord, yet they were never satiated. Purport, please read.
When the ladies of the city of Dwarka got up on the roofs of their palaces,
They never thought that they had previously many times seen the beautiful body of the infallible Lord. This indicates that they had no satiation in desiring to see the Lord. Anything material seen for a number of times ultimately becomes unattractive by the law of satiation. The law of satiation acts materially, but there is no scope for it in the spiritual realm. The word infallible is significant here because although the Lord had mercifully descended on the earth, He is still infallible. The living entities are fallible because when they come in contact with the material world, they lack their spiritual identity. And thus the body materially obtained becomes subjected to birth, growth, transformations, the situation of deterioration and annihilation under the laws of nature. The Lord's body is not like that. He descends as He is and is never under the laws of material modes. His body is the source of everything that we, the reservoir of all beauties beyond our experience. No one therefore is satiated by seeing the transcendental body of the Lord because there are always manifestations of newer and newer beauties. The transcendental name, form, qualities, entourage, etc. are all spiritual manifestations, and there is no satiation in chanting the holy name of the Lord. There is no satiation in discussing the qualities of the Lord, and there is no limitation of the entourage of the Lord. He is the source of all and is limitless. Yes. So, they had seen the Lord many times before. Nityam nirikshamananam. They always see the Lord. Nityam, regularly, whenever he's in Dwarka at least. But still, na vitripyanti. Still they were not satisfied. Na vitripyanti. Why? They see the same Lord, but still they're not satisfied. Why?
Krishna's beauty, Krishna's body is reservoir of all beauty. So his beauties keep on increasing eternally, and they also not get satisfied.
So it is always Nava Yovanam, ever fresh, ever new. And I think so we discussed this before also, this purport. You remember? 4th canto, 30th chapter, verse number 20. So there, this is the Prachitas who are speaking. So anyway, you can read that purport later. But there also, the Prachitas are speaking and Srila Prabhupada is explaining that how, so the basic summary of that discussion there is, when will one find everything in connection to the Lord ever fresh? One of the problems, one of the challenges which even devotees face is, after some time things become a little boring. So many times we have read the Bhagavatam, so many times we have read. Why to go for Mangalarti every day? So many days we have attended. So many times we had darshan. What difference it is? Huh? And the same mantra. So then stop chanting also. Or come up with some new mantra. So then people try to find out something new. What's new? Try to find out something new. But here, the Dwarkavasis are having darshan of the same Lord. Every time. But still, na vitrapyanti. They are not satisfied. Every time it is something new. So anything in connection to the Lord is like that. But there is a condition. So if you read that purport, Srila Prabhupada explains that to the sincere unalloyed devotees, the Paramatma within the heart makes everything ever fresh. So it depends on the quality of our devotional service. So for the sincere unalloyed devotees, then the Paramatma reciprocates. And then the Paramatma makes everything ever fresh. So same purport, one can keep on reading, but it will still appear to be ever fresh. Same Mahamantra, we keep on chanting. As Prabhupada many lectures he says, 24 hours one can chant, but still one will not get bored. So the important principle is, yes, this is the principle, law of satiation. In the material world, everything after some time becomes boring. Be it a new song, new movie, new dress, new car, new mobile, new laptop, everything. Only initially there is some excitement, something new, something new. After some days, finished. And of course, then the same principle applies in the modern day context, even to partners.
New partners.
So after some days, one partner becomes boring, then find another one. So therefore, the whole concept of live-in partners, and of course, all the problems associated with that. But any case, the point is that yes, it all depends upon our sincerity of devotional service, by which Krishna manifests as ever new and ever fresh. Text 26. Shriyo nivaso yasyora panapatram mukham drisham bahavo lokapalanam saranganam padambujam. So this is a beautiful description of the Lord. The Lord's chest is the abode of the goddess of fortune. His moon-like face is the drinking vessel for eyes which hanker after all that is beautiful. His arms are the resting places for the administrative demigods, and his lotus feet are the refuge of pure devotees who never talk or sing of any subject except his lordship. The lotus feet are refuge for his pure devotees. Then Prabhupada, beautiful description. We'll just read a few statements. Prabhupada writes, the face of the Lord is the embodiment of beauty. What they call beautiful nature is but a smile. And what they call the sweet songs of the birds are but specimens of the whispering voice of the Lord. So the birds, so when we hear the birds singing, we can remember Krishna speaking. Everything is related to the Lord. And there are administrative demigods in charge of departmental service of cosmic management, and there are tiny administrative gods in the state service. Tiny administrative gods in the state service. They're always afraid of other competitors. But if they take shelter of the arms of the Lord can protect them always from the attacks of enemies. A faithful servant of the Lord engaged in the service of administration is the ideal executive head and can well protect the interest of the people in general. And further down he says, the essence of everything is the Supreme Lord. He is called the Saram. And those who sing and talk about him are called the Sarangas, or the pure devotees. So as I said over here, Sarangana Padambujam. So those who know the Sar are called Sarangas. And the pure devotees are always hankering after the lotus feet of the Lord. Then he's describing some prayers, describing the lotus feet. And finally, Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying the devotees are satisfied with being placed at the lotus feet of the Lord and have no ambition to see his all-beautiful face or aspire for the protection of the strong arms of the Lord. They are humble by nature, and the Lord is always leaning towards such humble devotees. So the humble devotees keep themselves at the lotus feet, and Krishna is always leaning towards them. Okay. Text 27. As the Lord passed along the public road of Dwarka, his head was protected from sunshine by white umbrella. White feathered fans moved in semicircles. Showers of flowers fell upon the roads. His yellow garments and garlands of flowers made it appear as if a dark cloud was surrounded simultaneously by sun, moon, lightning, rainbows. Is it possible?
Yes.
Huh?
Yes.
Only God.
Here it is.
In the material world? No, it's not. Sun, moon, simultaneous? Impossible. So Prabhupada begins the purport by saying that the sun, moon, rainbow, lightning do not appear in the sky simultaneously. But for the Lord it is so. So further down he says, so all these activities of the firmaments being impossible simultaneous factors, means firmament means in the material nature, being impossible simultaneous factors cannot be adjusted by comparison. The adjustment is possible only when we think of the inconceivable potency of the Lord. The Lord is all powerful, and in His presence, anything impossible can be made possible by His inconceivable energy. So these apparent contradictions which can never exist, it is possible by the inconceivable mercy of the Lord.
Maybe one example comes to my mind today in Bhagavatam class, where the story was mentioned of Gopal Bhatta Goswami, that his disciple got received the mercy of Srimati Radharani, and still he was Guru Avagya. So it became inconceivable. How by Guru Avagya he has achieved the mercy of Srimati Radharani?
No, not by Guru Avagya he achieved.
No, but still he was Guru Avagya. He did not follow the sort of special master. But because of devotional service, he achieved the mercy also. He
That
becomes
was
a child
later
also.
on, na? That was later on. After Gopal Bhatta Goswami forgave him, then he actually received the mercy.
Before also he has received
Okay,
Radha Vallabh.
so that is correct. So before he was performing devotional service, he received the mercy. Then when he performed offense, when he committed the offense, he lost the mercy. When Gopal Bhatta Goswami forgave him, then once again he received the mercy.
But it was mentioned like this, that he rejected him. You chant Hare Krishna, he was not chanting. And then later on he started his own devotion in his own way. And then Radharani came and gave him Radha Vallabh deities, and he worshipped deities, he became very
The
famous.
deities was before only, I think.
Afterwards, he self-manifested deities and became very famous or opulence. But he was killed, so that it was little inconceivable. But then we thought this only, if Krishna wish, anything is possible.
Of course, it's slightly different. See, perfection in devotional service is not based on external manifestations. Just because somebody is getting some apparent external successes does not mean that is actual success in devotional service. Maybe some sukruti, some because of past devotional credits, one can get some success.
Followers, fame, that is okay.
Ah.
But if it's the case that Radharani herself come and self-manifested deities are awarded to him,
And
what is
then-
that? That is internal success.
Anyway,
Or this is
maybe we
like
have to go into a little more details of the pastime, which I don't know. So better not to comment. Hare Krishna. So we'll take a break now and continue. So now this one section ends of welcoming of Krishna and all these people coming to welcome. Now from the next verse, another section begins. That is, Krishna enters the palace. And then how he reciprocates with his parents and his queens. That is the next section. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Guruji. Today evening 5 o'clock Brahmachari class is there. So some devotees were asking that is it possible to postpone the exam to tomorrow because evening time will not be there for preparation. So then I wish to know all the devotees what they wish. Accordingly I will change. If all the devotees want tomorrow, then we will do it tomorrow. How many devotees want it today only? Please raise hands. टुडे, जो लोग चाहते हैं कि आज ही होना चाहिए एग्जाम, ओके 1 2 3 4 5 डिवोटीज हैं, अब क्या करें ये तो हाँ क्या करें रोज ही क्या करें, कल कर दें, कल आप 5 डिवोटीज के लिए कल पॉसिबल है, मॉर्निंग में करेंगे वही पिछली बार कैसे 11 to 12:30 चलेगा सबके लिए। ओके सो देन टुमारो मॉर्निंग 11 o'clock वेन्यू आपको ग्रुप पे डाल देंगे, एग्जाम टुमारो मॉर्निंग 11 o'clock। हरे कृष्ण, थैंक यू। और वो पॉलिसीज आई होप सबने पढ़ लिया होगा, तो वो वी विल फॉलो दैट पॉलिसीज थ्रू आउट द एंटायर भक्ति वैभव कोर्स। हरे कृष्ण।
Hare Krishna. Okay, let's continue. So now the Lord is entering into the palaces. So let's see what happens inside the palace. Text 28. Pravishtastu griham pitro parisvakta swamatravi bhavande shirasa sapta devaki pramukamuda. So pravishta, entering. After entering the house of his father, he was embraced by the mothers present, and the Lord offered his obeisances unto them by placing his head at their feet. The mothers were headed by Devaki, his real mother. Bhavande Shirasa. So they placed their head, his head, and their feet. So Srila Prabhupada speaks about 7 mothers. And he ends the purport by saying, Lord Krishna, the Lord of the universe, plays the part of an ideal son just to teach others how to treat their stepmothers. So basically whatever the Lord does is to set an example. Text 29. The mothers, after embracing their son, sat him on their laps. Due to pure affection, milk sprang from their breasts, They overwhelmed with delights, and the tears from their eyes wetted the Lord. Text 30. Thereafter the Lord entered his palaces, which were perfect to the fullest extent. His wives lived in them, and they numbered over 16,000. Okay, so that was dealing with the parents. Now there is dealing with his wives. And so the rest of the chapter is the dealings with the wives. And so in these verses and purports, we find Sudha Goswami is explaining and he is dispelling all misconceptions that how the Lord behaved like an ordinary householder. Okay, so he is entering into the palaces now. How many palaces? 16,108. And the descriptions of the palaces are there in the 10th canto. Here Prabhupada is briefly describing. All the palaces were made of the best marble stone. They were illuminated by jewels, decorated by curtains, carpets of velvet and silk, nicely bedecked, embroidered with gold lace. The personality of God means one is full with all power, all energy, all opulences, beauties, knowledge, renunciation. Therefore, in the palaces of the Lord, there was nothing wanting for fulfilling all the desires of the Lord. The Lord is unlimited, his desires are unlimited, and supply is also unlimited. Everything being unlimited, it is concisely described here as sarvakamam, or full with all desirable equipments. Text 31. The queens of Lord Sri Krishna rejoiced within their minds to see their husband home after a long period abroad. The queens got up at once from their seats and meditations. As was socially customary, they covered their faces shyly and looked about coyly. So, now in this verse onwards, all these purports are very important because Srila Prabhupada is nicely establishing that how these pastimes of the Lord with his wives are not mundane. And so, there are a series of points which he is making to establish this. Okay, so let's read this purport. Coyly also means shyly only. I don't know, you see a dictionary for exact meaning. कौन पढ़ रहा है?
As mentioned above, the Lord entered his home, his palaces occupied by 16,108 queens. This means that the Lord at once expanded himself in as many plenary expansions as there were queens and palaces, and entered in each and every one of them simultaneously and separately. Here is another manifestation of the feature of his internal potency. He can expand himself in as many forms of the spiritual identity as he desires, even though he is one without second. It is confirmed by the Shruti mantra that the Absolute One is alone, and yet he becomes many as soon as he so desires. Thus, these manifold expansions of the Supreme Lord are manifested as plenary and separated portions. The separated portions are representations of his energies, and the plenary portions are manifestations of his personality.
Okay, so Vibhinnamshas and Swamshas. Who are Vibhinnamshas? The Jivas. Yes.
Thus, the personality of Godhead manifested himself in 16,108 plenary expansions and simultaneously entered into each and every one of the palaces of the queens. This is called Vaibhava, or the transcendental potency of the Lord. And because he can do so, he is also known as Yogeshwara. Ordinarily, a yogi or mystic living being is able to expand himself at most to tenfold expansions of his body. But the Lord can do so to the extent of as many thousands of infinitely, thousands or infinitely as he likes.
So here it is mentioned that the yogi can also expand himself. But at most, here 10, actually in teachings of Lord Chaitanya Prabhupada says 8, maximum 8. But here he says 10, whatever. But these expansions of the yogi, they are like reflections. Just like reflection. Can the reflection do something different from the original person? No. So the expansions of the yogi are like reflections or chaya or like shadow. So they cannot do anything separately. So whatever the original person does, all the expansions also will do exactly the same thing. Nothing different. But here, what do we see? So Krishna enters into each of the palaces, and in each of the palaces he does something different. So Narad Muni, when he visited all the palaces, he saw. In all the palaces he is doing something different. So this is the special potency of the Supreme Lord. Only he can do like this. Okay?
Unbelievers become astonished to learn that Lord Krishna married more than 16,000 queens because they think of Lord Krishna as one of them and measure the potency of the Lord by their own unlimited potency.
Okay, so this is Dr. Frog. Measure everything with their own limited potency.
One should know, therefore, that the Lord is never on the level of the living beings, who are but expansions of his marginal potency, and one should never equalize the potent of the potency, although there is very little difference of the quality between the potent and potency. The queens were all expansions of his internal potency, and thus the potent and potencies are perpetually exchanging transcendental pleasures, known as the pastimes of the Lord.
Okay, a nice definition of what is meant by pastime of the Lord. Pastime of the Lord is what? Transcendental exchange between the potent and the potencies. So these are all the pastimes of the Lord, is basically that only. Exchanges between the potent and the potencies.
One should not therefore become astonished to learn that the Lord married so many wives. On the contrary, one should affirm that even if the Lord marries 16,000 million wives, he is not completely manifesting his unlimited and inexhaustible potency. He married only 16,000 wives.
And that's interesting. He married only 16,000 wives. So even if he marries 16,000 million, even then it is less only. Because of course, Prabhupada explains, after all the jivas are actually his husband for all the jivas. Okay, check.
He married only 16,000 wives and entered in each and every one of the different palaces just to impress in the history of the human being on the surface of the earth that the Lord is never equal to or less than any human being, however powerful he may be. No one therefore is either equal or greater than the Lord. The Lord is always great in all respects. God is great, is eternal truth. Therefore, as soon as the queens saw from a distance their husband, who was away from the home for a long period due to the battle of the Kurukshetra, they all arose from the slumber of the meditation and prepared to receive their most beloved. According to Yajnavalkya's religious injunctions, a woman whose husband is away from the home should not take part in any social functions, should not decorate her body, should not laugh, or should not go away, should not go to any relative's house in any circumstance. This is the vow of the ladies whose husbands are away from the home. At the same time, it is also enjoined that the wife should never present herself before the husband in an unclean state. She must decorate herself with ornaments and good dress and should always be present before the husband in a happy and joyous mood. The queens of Lord Krishna were all in meditation, thinking of the Lord's absence and were always meditating upon him. The Lord's devotees cannot live for a moment without the meditating on the Lord. And what to speak of the queens, who were all goddesses of fortune, incarnated as queens in the pastimes of the Lord at Dwarka. They can never be separated from the Lord, either by presence or by trance. The gopis at Vrindavan could not forget the Lord when the Lord was away in the forest cow herding. When the Lord boy Krishna was absent from the village, the gopis at home used to worry about him, traversing the rough ground with his soft lotus feet. By thinking thus, they were sometimes overwhelmed in trance and mortified in the heart. Such is the condition of the pure associates of the Lord. They are always in trance, and so the queens also were in trance during the absence of the Lord. Presently, having seen the Lord from a distance, they at once gave up all their engagements, including the vows of the woman as described above. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, there was a regular psychological reactions on the occasion. First of all, rising from their seats, although they were wanted to see their husband, they were deterred because of feminine shyness. But due to strong ecstasy, they overcome that stage of weakness and became caught up by the idea of embracing the Lord. And this thought actually made them unconscious of their surrounding environment. This primary state of the ecstasy annihilated all other formalities and social conventions, and thus they escaped all stumbling blocks on the path of the meeting Lord. And that is the perfect stage of meeting the Lord of the soul, Sri Krishna.
So very nice, elaborate purport Prabhupada has given. Prabhupada has taken all the acharyas of the commentaries of previous acharyas, and plus he has added so many things of his own. And such a beautiful commentary Prabhupada is giving to establish that how only the Lord can do these things which are totally inconceivable for an ordinary person. No ordinary person can do something like this.
So that is between the internal potency or how?
No, in general, we know that qualitative oneness and quantitative difference.
So here then little difference of quality.
Okay, in terms of qualities also there is some difference. We know Krishna has 64 qualities, others have less qualities. So even in number of qualities there is a difference.
So in that sense.
Okay, and then Prabhupada is quoting this Yajnavalkya, that how the woman should not decorate. And so when Krishna just came to Dwaraka, so these women, the wives, were actually following these various vratas, vows, because as is mentioned, the wife is not supposed to decorate herself and eat luxurious foods and all that. So they were maintaining all these vratas. But when they saw Krishna coming, then to some degree they gave up those vratas, but still immediately they could not dress themselves properly and all that. So, but then it said that Krishna was pleased to see them in that state, that they were maintaining all these vratas when he was away. So therefore these points are being quoted over here. That how the queens were so devoted to their husband that they were following all these vratas. Okay, fine. Text 32. Tam atmaje drishtivir antaratmana durant bhava parire virepatim niruddham apyashravadambu netrayor vilajjitantinam bhriguvarya veklavad. The insuperable ecstasy was so strong that the queens who were shy first embraced the Lord in the innermost recesses of their hearts. Then they embraced him visually, and then they sent their sons to embrace him, which is equal to personal embracing. But O chief amongst the Bhrigus, Although they try to restrain their feelings, they inadvertently shed tears. Okay, so that was the prema of these queens for the Lord. So although due to feminine shyness, there were many hindrances to embracing the dear husband, Lord Shri Krishna, the queens performed that act by seeing him, by putting him in the course of their hearts, and by sending their sons to embrace him. Still, the act remained unfinished, and tears rolled down their cheeks despite all endeavors to check them. And then he explains one, indirectly embraces the husband by sending the son to embrace him, because the son is developed as part of the mother's body. Okay. Text 33. Yadyapyasau parshvagato raho gatas tatapi tasyagriyugam navam navam pade pade ka viramet tatpatash chalapi ashrina jahati karhiche. Although Lord Shri Krishna was constantly by their sides as well as exclusively alone, his feet appeared to them to be newer and newer. The goddess of fortune, although by nature always restless and moving, could not quit the Lord's feet. So what woman can be detached from those feet, having once taken shelter of them? Okay, so they always had association of the Lord's lotus feet, but still they appeared what? Tasyangri yugam navam navam, always appeared ever new. So we already discussed that point. So in the second paragraph, Prabhupada writes, the living beings are by constitution feminine by nature. The male or enjoyer is the Lord, and all manifestations of his different potencies are feminine by nature. In the Bhagavad Gita, the living beings are designated as Paraprakriti, superior potency, material elements are Aparaprakriti, inferior potency. Such potencies are always employed for the satisfaction of the employer or the enjoyer. The supreme enjoyer is the Lord himself, stated in Bhagavad Gita. The potencies, therefore, when engaged directly in the service of the Lord, revive the natural color, and thus there is no disparity in the relation of the potent and the potency. And then he gives a nice example in the next paragraph. Generally, people engaged in service are always seeking some post under the government or the supreme enjoyer of the state. In lectures also, Prabhupada says that many times people are seeking government service. I don't know if these days it still applies. Huh? Applies? Anyway, at least previously people would prefer government jobs because main reason is there is job security, because once one gets government job, nobody can kick them out, whether they work or not. But nowadays we can see in private companies how many people are being laid off. Hundreds of people, right? Hundreds, thousands of people are being just laid off. So therefore people always prefer government service. And of course, especially previously though, government servants hardly worked anything, practically getting free salary. So in any case, but the job security was there. So similarly, since the Lord is the supreme enjoyer of everything in or outside the universe, it is happiness to be employed by him. So just see, we are so fortunate, we are employed by whom? The Supreme Lord. Once engaged in the supreme governmental service of the Lord, no living being wishes to be relieved from the engagement. The highest perfection of human life is to seek some employment under the Lord's supreme service. That will make one extremely happy. One need not seek the moving goddess of fortune without the relation of the Lord. Okay, so Lakshmi ji is called Chanchal, but when she is in relation with the Supreme Lord, then she becomes stable. Otherwise, very chanchal. So therefore, the greatest happiness is to have employment in the governmental service of the Lord. So we all have got that service. So we're so fortunate. So we should remain. Otherwise, if we don't remain in this service, then we'll have to go in the service of this Chanchal Lakshmi. Then it's very difficult. Okay, text 34. Evam Ripanam Chitibara Janmanam Akshauni Vipra Parivritta Tejasam Vidhaya Vairam Shwasano Yathanalam Mito Vatheno Parato Nirayudha. The Lord was pacified after killing those kings who were burdensome to the earth. They were puffed up with their military strength, their horses, elephants, chariots, infantry, etc. He himself was not a party in the fight. He simply created hostility between the powerful administrators and they fought amongst themselves. He was like the wind, which causes friction between bamboos and so sparks a fire. So, this example came before also, right? That how the Lord, He created the fire in the Kuru dynasty, and that's how they were destroyed. So, similar example is being given here. So, why this? So, in between, why Sutta Goswami has inserted this verse? Till now, we were speaking about queens, right? Then why all of a sudden he has inserted this verse? The next verse again he speaks about the queens. But in between he inserted this verse about the kings, how the Lord, He destroyed all these kings. About what? Okay, that's correct. So yes, Sutta Goswami wants to show that even though the Lord is behaving like an ordinary husband with his queens, but still the Lord is so powerful that He can, just by His wish, He can kill all these powerful kings. So yes, that's one of the reasons why Sutta Goswami is inserting these verses. Because here in this whole description it appears as if the Lord is like an ordinary husband, having some ordinary affairs with his queens. And also, one more reason is because this Vishwanath Thakur says that he wants to show what is the relationship of the Lord with the queens and what is the relationship of the Lord with the other people of the world. He wants to show that difference. So how He has the relationship of prema with His queens and His intimate associates, but how He deals with other people, it's not the same. So He also wants to show that difference. So that is why He's inserting this verse over here. And then Prabhupada is speaking about the reason why the Lord incarnates Dharmasya Glani. So when there's Dharma Glani, then the Lord, He does this. So in the middle of this purport, Prabhupada writes that when such misuse of human energy is prominent, the saner living beings become perturbed by the awkward situation created by the vicious administrators who are simply burdens of the earth, and the Lord appears by His internal potency just to save the saner section of humanity and to alleviate the burden due to the earthly administrators in different parts of the world. Paritrana sadhana vinashaya dharma samsthapanartha. He does not favor either of the unwanted administrators, but by His potential power, He creates hostility between such unwanted administrators as the air creates fire in the forest by friction of the bamboos. The fire in the forest takes place automatically by the force of the air, and similarly the hostility between different groups of politicians takes place by the unseen design of the Lord. The unwanted administrators, puffed up by false power and military strength, thus become engaged in fighting amongst themselves over ideological conflicts and so exhaust themselves of all powers. The history of the world reflects this factual will of the Lord, and it will continue to be enacted until the living beings are attached to the service. So this is how the Lord orchestrates. In the previous class we were also discussing of the children in the school, punishment by the teacher, giving trouble to each other. So that is how the Lord arranges all these things. Text 35. Sa esha naralokesmin avatina svamaya reme sri ratna kutasto bhagavan prapito yata. That Supreme Personality of God, Sri Krishna, out of his causeless mercy, appeared on this planet by his internal potency and employed himself amongst competent women as if he were engaging in mundane affairs. Okay, so it appears prakrita yatha. It appears as if it's prakrita, mundane. But at the same time, it is, how is it performing on these activities? Swamayaya. All these activities are being performed by his internal potency. And the ladies also were not ordinary. So they have been described as Stri Ratna. Stri Ratna. So, in the word to word Prabhupada says, woman who is competent to become a wife of the Lord. So the Lord also was not ordinary, the wives also were not ordinary. So both were acting on the spiritual platform. Okay, read this purport.
The Lord married and lived like a householder. This is certainly like a mundane affair. But when we learn that he married 16,108 wives and lived with them separately in each and every palace, certainly it is not a mundane. Therefore, the Lord living as a householder amongst his competent wives is never mundane, and his behavior with them is never to be understood as a mundane sex relation. The women who became the wives of the Lord are certainly not ordinary women, because to get the Lord as one's husband is the result of many millions of birth tapasya, austerity. When the Lord appears on different lokas or planets or on this planet of human being, he displays his transcendental pastime just to attract the conditioned souls to become his eternal servants, friends, parents, and lovers respectively in the transcendental world, where the Lord eternally reciprocates such exchanges of services. Service is pervertedly represented in the material world and broken untimely, resulting in sad experience. The illusion living being conditioned by material nature cannot understand out of ignorance that all our relations here in this mundane world are temporary and full of inebrities. Such relations cannot help us be happy perpetually. But if the same relations is established with the Lord, then we are transferred to the transcendental world after leaving this material body and become eternally related with him in the relation we desire. The women amongst whom he lived as their husband are not therefore women of the mundane world, but are eternally related with him as a transcendental wives, a position which they attain by perfection of devotional service. That is their competency. The Lord is Param Brahma, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Conditioned souls seek after perpetual happiness in all places, not only on this earth but also on other planets throughout the universe. Because constitutionally a spiritual spark, as he is, can travel to any part of God's creation. But being conditioned by the material modes, it tries to travel in space by spacecrafts and so fails to reach his destination. The law of gravitation is binding upon him like the shackles of prisoner. By other processes he can reach anywhere, but even if he reaches the highest planet, he cannot attain that perpetual happiness for which he is searching life after life. When he comes to his senses, however, he seeks after Brahman happiness, knowing it for certain that unlimited happiness which he is seeking is never attainable in the material world. As such, the Supreme Being, Parabrahman, certainly does not seek his happiness anywhere in the material world, nor can his paraphernalia of happiness be found in the material world. He is not impersonal, because he is the leader and the Supreme Being amongst innumerable living beings. He cannot be impersonal. He is exactly like us, and he has all the propensities of an individual living being in fullness. He marries exactly like us, but his marriage is neither mundane nor limited by our experience in the conditioned state. His wives therefore appear like mundane women, but actually they are all transcendental liberated souls, perfect manifestation of internal energy.
So you see in all these purports, Srila Prabhupada is trying to establish that this relationship of Krishna with his queens is not mundane, ordinary. So in this purport, there are two reasons. What are the two reasons? Two main reasons are there.
Their qualification. Their qualification.
Whose qualification?
Queens.
The queen's qualification. What is their qualification? Yes, they have achieved that position after so many austerities over many lifetimes. They have achieved that position. So they are not ordinary. That is one point. Another point? So? So see, Prabhupada is explaining all that how everyone is trying to achieve happiness and all that. So, in this material world, everyone is trying to achieve happiness. But after trying to attain happiness, even in the higher planetary systems, one ultimately comes to that realization that one cannot achieve happiness in the material world. Then what he does? Then he gives up the attempt for material happiness to get spiritual happiness in relationship with Parabrahman. So, if ordinary living entities give up material happiness to achieve spiritual happiness in relation with Parabrahman, then why will Parabrahman come to the level of material happiness? That is the logical point Prabhupada is trying to explain in the second paragraph. So if we have to give up material happiness to achieve spiritual happiness, then how will Parabrahman come to the level of material happiness? Correct? So, therefore, surely the Supreme Lord is not enjoying some material happiness of this world, because he is least interested in this type of material happiness. Okay, text 36. Udam bhava pishuna malavalguhasa vridavaloka nihato madano piyasa samuyya chapam majahat pramadottamasta yasyendriyam vimathitum kuhake nasheku. Although the queen's beautiful smiles and furtive glances were all spotless and exciting, and although they could conquer Cupid himself by making him give up his bow in frustration, and although even the tolerant Shiva could fall victim to them, still despite all their magical feats and attractions, they could not agitate the senses of the Lord. So these queens were so beautiful that even Cupid is enamored by them, even Lord Shiva may be attracted to them, but still they could not agitate the Supreme Lord. So Prabhupada is describing how even Lord Shiva was agitated by Mohini Murti. And Prabhupada is describing about the mundane male-female attractions of this world. So basically he's explaining that verse from Lord Rishabdev. Yes, Kumsa Sriya Mithuni Bhavametam Tayor Mitho Hridaya Grantimaho Ata Griha Kshetra Sutapta Vitte Janasya Mohoyam Aham Mameti. So Prabhupada is basically explaining that verse there. So, in the middle of the purport, Prabhupada is writing, those who are therefore on the path of salvation for going back home, back to Godhead, are especially advised by all scriptural instruction to become free from such paraphernalia of material attraction. So all these are paraphernalia of material attraction. What? Griha, Kshetra, Suta, Apta, Vitte. So all these are paraphernalia of material attraction. And that is possible only by the association of the devotees of the Lord who are called Mahatmas. Cupid throws his arrow upon the living beings to make them mad after the opposite sex, whether the party is actually beautiful or not. Cupid's provocations are going on even among beastly societies who are all ugly looking in the estimation of the civilized nations. So that's the point. So even in the animal species, Cupid is having his effect. So therefore, there also there is male, female, and so though we may consider those species to be very dirty or ugly, like frogs. No? So which human being is attracted to frogs? But still, the he frog and she frog, they get attracted. That means what? They consider the other person to be very beautiful. That's why they get attracted. So that's how Cupid is having his effect in all the species, even though they may be ugly. And then he's talking about Mohini incarnation, how Lord Shiva also was struck by Cupid's arrow because he also became mad after Mohini incarnation and acknowledged himself to be defeated. Cupid, however, was himself captivated by the grave and exciting dealings of the goddess of fortune, and he voluntarily gave up his bow and arrow in a spirit of frustration because he could not do anything. So he tried to attract the queens, but he could not attract them. Why? Why?
They are attracted to Krishna.
Yes, because they are attracted to Krishna. So therefore Cupid could not do anything with them. And then he tried to have his effect on Krishna. But then when he tried to do something with Krishna, then he himself got so attracted by Krishna's beauty. So then he got totally frustrated. I can't do anything over here. So therefore he gave his bow and arrow in frustration. Such was the beauty and attraction of the queens of Lord Krishna. Yet they could not disturb the transcendental senses of the Lord. This is because the Lord is all perfect, Atmaram, or self-sufficient. He does not require any extraneous help for his personal satisfaction. Therefore, the queens could not satisfy the Lord by their feminine attractiveness, but they satisfied him by their sincere affection and service. Okay, so therefore those words are put in italics. They satisfied him by their sincere affection and service. We discussed this point yesterday also. The only thing that can satisfy Krishna is bhakti. And bhakti is that sincere affection and service. That is the only thing that can attract Krishna. Because he is Atmaram, he is Aptakam, he has everything of the world. So what can attract him? Nothing can attract him. So the only thing that can attract him is bhakti, sincere affection and service. Only by unalloyed transcendental loving service could they satisfy the Lord, and the Lord was pleased to treat them as wives in reciprocation. So therefore, it is mentioned in other places that the queens, even though there is no dust in Vaikuntha, still they are sweeping. Why? Somehow to attract his mercy. So they're trying to render some service to attract his mercy. That's all. Because that is the only thing which can attract him. Thus, being satisfied by their unalloyed service only, the Lord reciprocated the service just like a devout husband. Otherwise, he had no business becoming the husband of so many wives. He is the husband of everyone. But to one who accepts him as such, he reciprocates. Correct? So, everyone is Prakriti. Only Purusha is Krishna. So, in that sense, Krishna is husband to everyone. But everyone does not accept him as Purusha, as husband. That is the problem. He is husband, but everyone does not accept him as such. But those who accept him as husband, as Purusha, then Krishna also reciprocates. This unalloyed affection for the Lord is never to be compared to mundane lust. It is purely transcendental, and the grave dealings which the queens displayed in natural feminine ways were also transcendental because the feelings were expressed out of transcendental ecstasy. So it's all on the level of prema, this reciprocation. It is already explained in the previous verse that the Lord appeared like a mundane husband, but factually his relation with his wives was transcendental, pure and unconditioned with the modes of material nature. Okay, so here another reason is told as to why this relationship is not mundane. What is that?
Not motivated by the
Yes, why? Because he is Atmaram. He is Atmaram. He does not require all these wives to satisfy him. Okay, 37. Tammayam manyate loko hiya sangam api sanginam atmopam yena manujam vyaprinvanam yato buddha. The common materialistic conditioned souls speculate that the Lord is one of them. Out of their ignorance, they think that the Lord is affected by matter, although he is unattached. So here he is describing what the Buddha, those are foolish and ignorant, what they think he is describing. So they think that he is like an ordinary person. They think that he is also affected like Manujam, ordinary man. But they don't understand that he is not like an ordinary person. So Prabhupada is basically describing that how when he descends into this world, he does so by his internal potency, not by his external potency. So the mental speculators, they cannot understand all this. Towards the end of the purport, Prabhupada writes, he cannot understand that the sun is always unaffected by infectious matter. The mental speculators compare everything from the standpoint of experimental knowledge of their own selves. Thus, when the Lord is found to act like an ordinary person in matrimonial bondage, they consider him to be like one of them without considering that the Lord can at once marry 16,000 wives or more. Due to a poor fund of knowledge, they accept one side of the picture while disbelieving the other. This means that due to ignorance only, they always think of Lord Krishna as like themselves and make their own conclusions, which are absurd and unauthentic from the version of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Text 38. Etadishanamishasya prakritistopi tadgune na yujjate sadatmaste yatha buddhistadashraya. This is the divinity of the personality of Godhead. He is not affected by the qualities of material nature even though he is in contact with them. Similarly, the devotees who have taken shelter of the Lord do not become influenced by the material qualities. So the Lord is not affected, and the devotees who take shelter of the Lord, they are also not affected by material qualities. So therefore, Srila Prabhupada is first of all describing about the Supreme Lord, that actually he is in contact with such qualities because he is the ultimate source of everything, yet he is above the actions of such qualities. He is known therefore as Yogeshwara, or the master of mystic power, or in other words, the all-powerful. Even his learned devotees are not affected by the influence of the material modes. And then he gives the example of the 6 Goswamis, how the 6 Goswamis, they were not contaminated by honor or insult, hunger or satisfaction, sleep or wakefulness, which are all resultant actions of the 3 modes of material nature. So the devotees who take shelter of the Lord, they are also not affected by the modes. And then towards the end, Prabhupada quotes 9.30. What is 9.30? Apichet suduracharo bhajate mamane bhak sadureva samantavya samyu. So even if one commits an abominable action, the devotees they remain, they are to accept it as fully transcendental because of his being engaged 10% in the devotional service of the Lord. The Lord protects him always because of his rendering service unto him, and the fallen conditions are to be considered accidental and temporary. They will vanish in no time. So if the devotees become transcendental by taking shelter of the Lord, then how can the Lord be influenced by the modes? By taking shelter of the Lord, one becomes transcendental to the modes. Then how can the Lord be influenced by the modes? So that is what he is trying to explain. So therefore, this relationship of the Lord and the queens is not mundane. And the last verse, Tam menire balamudha strinam chano vratam braha apramana vido bharto ishvaram matayo yatha. The simple and delicate women truly thought that Lord Sri Krishna, their beloved husband, followed them and was dominated by them. They were unaware of the extent of the glories of their husband, as the atheists are unaware of him as the supreme controller. Please read the purport.
Even the transcendental wives of Lord Shri Krishna did not know completely the unfathomable glories of the Lord. This ignorance is not mundane, because there is some action of the internal potency of the Lord in exchange of feelings between Him and His eternal associates. The Lord exchanges transcendental relations in 5 ways: as proprietor, master, friend, son, and lover. And in each of these pastimes, he plays fully by the potency of Yogamaya, the internal potency. He plays exactly like an equal friend with the cowherd boys or even with friends like Arjuna. He plays exactly like a son in the presence of Yashoda Mata. Here, he plays exactly like a lover in presence of cowherd damsels, and he plays exactly like a husband in the presence of queens of Dwarka. Such devotees of the Lord never think of the Lord as the Supreme, but think of Him exactly as a common friend, a pet son, or a lover, or a husband very much dear to heart and soul. That is the relationship between the Lord and His transcendental devotees, who act as His associates in the spiritual sky, where there are innumerable Vaikuntha planets. When the Lord descends, He does so along with His entourage to display a complete picture of transcendental world, where pure love and devotion for the Lord prevail without any mundane tinge of lording it over the creation of the Lord. Such devotees of the Lord are all liberated souls, perfect representations of the marginal or internal potency in complete negation of influence of the external potency. The wives of Lord Krishna were made to forget the immeasurable glories of the Lord by the internal potency, so that there might not be any flaw of exchange, and they took it for granted that the Lord was a henpecked husband, always following them in lonely places. In other words, even the personal associates of the Lord do not know Him perfectly well. So, what do the thesis writers or mental speculators know about the transcendental glories of the Lord? The mental speculators present different theses as to His becoming the cause of the creation, the ingredients of the creation, or the material and efficient causes of the creation, etc. But all this is but partial knowledge about the Lord. Factually, they are as ignorant as the common man. The Lord can be known by the mercy of the Lord only, and by no other means. But since the dealings of the Lord with His wives are based on the pure transcendental love and devotion, the wives are all on the transcendental plane without material contamination. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purpose of the first canto, 11th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Lord Krishna's Entrance into Dwarka.
So here, so the queens, they were in ignorance about the position of the Supreme Lord. But their ignorance is not like ignorance of common materialistic people. Correct? So the common materialistic people are in ignorance under the influence of external energy. And the queens are in ignorance due to influence of internal energy. And why the queens are put into forgetfulness? Yes. Otherwise, there will be a hindrance in the relation. Correct. So if the other person is thinking, oh, here is Supreme Lord, then they cannot relish the relationship like a husband and wife. They can't accept him as an ordinary husband if they know that he is Supreme Lord. Therefore, they are made to forget. Otherwise, or the cowherd boys, how can they play with Krishna and wrestle with him if they know he is Bhagwan? Correct? Then they'll be afraid, oh, we'll offend Bhagwan. So, or how can Mother Yashoda bind Krishna if she knows that Krishna is Bhagwan? So therefore, just for the sake of exchange of love and affection, to make the pastime so sweet and relishable, just like dealings in ordinary material sense, just for exchange of love and affection, so the internal potency makes these devotees forget the position of the Supreme Lord, but their ignorance is not like the ignorance of materialistic people. So therefore Prabhupada says, So these people are put into ignorance by the internal potency, but then these thesis writers and all these other people, they are in total ignorance under the influence of the external potency. So what they will understand? They can never understand. So in this way one has to understand these relationships between the Lord and His pure devotees. Okay, so let us revise. So what are all the reasons why this relationship between Krishna and the queens, why it is not ordinary? Ek batao.
The queens were not ordinary women. They did tapasya for life.
Okay, so one is the queens were not ordinary, they did a lot of tapasya. What else? Okay, the Lord is Atmaram, so He does not require the queens for satisfaction. What else?
The pastime means transcendental exchange between potent and potency.
Okay, so yes, okay, that's a pastime between the Lord and the queens. Okay, what else? Okay, even Cupid fails to attract the queens or Krishna. Okay, so Krishna is Atmaram, yes. What else? Wait, somebody else?
If the mundane people there, they are not happy with this mundane objects, sense object, they are not getting happiness. And they are searching happiness and the Lord. Then why Lord will come to this platform to enjoy?
Correct. So the materialists, when they understand that happiness cannot be found in the material world, they renounce material happiness to achieve happiness on the transcendental platform in connection with the Supreme Brahman. Then why the Supreme Brahman will come down to material happiness? And? Yes, so by surrendering to the Supreme Lord, the devotees transcend the modes, then how can the Lord be under the influence of the material modes? And? You forgot the first reason. What is that? Yes. So only the Lord can expand Himself into so many forms simultaneously, enter all the palaces, perform so many activities. So who can do this? So obviously it's not some mundane activity. So these are all the reasons why this relationship between the Lord and the queens is not some mundane affairs. So these are all important points because people in general have these questions, how the Lord is performing these activities like a mundane person. So we should be able to state all these reasons to explain why these relationships are not ordinary. Okay, fine. So that ends our discussions on this unit 4. So thank you all very much for your kind attention. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Grantha Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Okay, attendance. Aditya Ram Prabhu, Advait Karna Prabhu, Akshobhya Prabhu.